is no good. Rebounded by Anthony. 2 seconds left. Anthony for the win. Cody throws it. Cole Anthony gives the Magic a victory.
Close up Magic.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Close Up Magic. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron, and today we got a fun episode. I know you're hearing this on a different day, and that's because I did not record this past week, and we are recording this on Saturday, April 8th. And we decided to do that because, there's one game left of the season. I didn't really feel like doing a season, recapping the last couple games, and kind of just wanted to do a season review. Today's a great day to do that because there's only one game left that doesn't really have much of an effect on the Magic and how I'm going to look at the season review. So recording it today. And I hope you all are psyched on it. We have Luke Smith joining us. He'll be joining us in just a moment to kind of just give some thoughts and have an organic conversation about the Orlando Magic and their season. Before we get into that, the housekeeping, obviously, that we do every week. If you want to financially support the show, you can do that through buying merch or joining our Patreon program. Down below, you can do those links. So check that out. We will be doing a giveaway. I'll be running it on Twitter this week. We're going to be giving away a jersey. All you're going to have to do is fill out a Google form. That's it. It's super simple. Fill out a Google form, and you'll get a chance to win an authentic Orlando Magic jersey. It's a way I want to say thank you all for tuning into the show. Anyone can win. If you're a Patreon, you're going to get double entries automatically without needing to do anything. But yeah, so check that out. I'll be posting that probably actually the same day I post this podcast in the Twitter thread. So the only other shout I'm going to give is to the network that supports the show is 19 Media Group. They're awesome. They help us do a lot of really cool things. And I'm also going to shout out our homies at The Gimmick Infringement. They are on the network. That is their podcast name, The Gimmick Infringement. They're all about covering wrestling. So if you want to get caught up in all things WrestleMania that just happened, go check out The Gimmick Infringement. My friends Brad and Tyler, they're awesome. All right, without further ado, Luke, what's going on, man? All the way from Australia. How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I got a question for you, and you're gonna laugh because we just talked about this. But have you seen any kangaroos today?
No. Funnily enough, dude, living in the second most populated city in Australia, they're not just running around wildly on the streets. I don't wish they were. I think it'd kind of fuck things up a little bit if we had kangaroos running around. But no, I live in a very densely populated area, so no kangaroos, unfortunately.
I just have to ask. You and I just had a conversation about this 3 days ago, but I have to ask again because I know every listener who hears that you are from Australia is obviously thinking about kangaroos as well. Americans have this weird fascination with your country and kangaroos. It's really weird. So, like I mentioned the other day, I'm going up to my mum's place for a couple of nights next weekend. She lives about an hour and 15-minute drive from here. She lives in a town called Bendigo, which for those playing at home is the town that Dyson Daniels, the New Orleans draft pick, is actually from. And she lives kind of on the very outer edge of the town in the furthest out neighborhood. It's actually called Kangaroo Flat. That just clicked with me. I didn't even think of that the other day. It's called Kangaroo Flat, the neighborhood she lives in. And she'll get if it's hot and sunny, around the time the sun starts to go down, she'll sometimes get them in her, near her area. So if I get any kangaroos, man, I'll send you some video footage so you can live out your American fantasy. Dude, send it on the Twitter too, so everyone on Twitter can live out the fantasies of kangaroos.
Sure.
All right, man. Enough about kangaroos. I'm glad you're doing well. Like we said in the intro, we are recording this Saturday, April 8th for us. For Luke, it's actually Sunday, April 9th. And the Magic have one game left versus the Heat. And the season is basically over, right? They've been tanking the last couple of games. They're out of the play-in. They are 34-47 with a tie for the 6th best lottery odds. At worst that they can fall if they were to win would be 7th. So we kind of know how this story is going to end, right? Without getting too much into that aspect, Luke, let's rewind. Let's go all the way back to the very beginning of this season. Coming into the season, now looking back on it at the end, we've seen the storylines play out. Do you think, I guess I'm going to start off with a simple question. Was this season a success for you?
For me, yeah, man. I actually was thinking about this this morning before we jumped on, that it's been a huge success to me. I think it's a positive year. I think this is exactly the type of year that teams like us have. I was listening to one of the Athletic episodes yesterday, like the Daily Ding, the Nerder podcast stuff that they do with a bunch of the writers from there. And one of the people on it pointed out that they talked about the Magic, and they're in that really sweet spot while a certain subsection of NBA fans understand that we're fun and we're gritty and we're fighting and we're really competing in games, but people haven't properly started talking about us yet. So aesthetically, from the NBA, everyone else looking at us, we're in that spot. And I think as fans, we know too that we actually are that. And we've seen the core is kind of built in a way, there's still, you could still add other talent to it, but we have really had a successful year in regards to building a bit of a foundation behind 2 or 3 guys, having them play through their mistakes, really learning how to compete in games. I don't really know, when I see people be really negative about the season, I don't really know what you're expecting. If you are watching the rest of the NBA, this is the step. This is the year. This is what you see teams have. And I think that's really cool. For me, the start wasn't great. I think we can maybe get into what we think the season might have been if we saw a different start than 5-20. But everything that's come since then is something that I'm incredibly excited about, and I can't wait for next year.
I feel the same way, right? I think there's individual storylines that I can say didn't plan out right, or I was disappointed in, or annoyed me, or whatever. But for the most part, we took huge steps as far as finding out more about our core and who we're building around. Obviously, landing number 1 with Paulo was a dream come true to help us figure out that foundation. Franz taking a step. Yeah.
Before we end this podcast, are we going to do a tankathon spin on the podcast?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Cool. Keep going.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
I'm frozen for a second. That was funny. I had a great face. So anyways, back to it. But we found some new information. Some guys took some steps, which were great. Paulo, Franz, Markelle Fultz, even towards the second half of him coming back has in my opinion, really taken a nice step in his play. Cole Anthony, there's been some disappointment along the season with Chuma and J.I. and RJ and Bull to an extent, where Bull can kind of fit on both categories, a surprise and a disappointment, depending, and maybe we'll get into that. But overall, this team got into much closer games. Sure, there were some blowouts, but every team has blowouts. They, are going to be at least, 12, 13 games above their record from last year. Our rookies are going to win Rookie of the Year. We obviously made the right pick there. The people we picked last year are blossoming. Coach Mosley, as much as I like to be annoyed with him for the most part, did pretty well this year as well. So, yeah, man, I also agree. This season was a success. Now, let's just stay on the positive train for a minute. Let's say, what is one of your favorite success stories on more of a smaller level instead of the larger Magic season as a whole?
I think I just want to kind of quickly touch on what you said though. You made a really good point. Absolutely. That you could be overarching, look at the team and be this is a great thing. But those seasons come when there is a bit of push and pull within the team and you need to see what's working. So we've seen kind of like, we saw the two ends of the Bol experience. We saw Cole, who has finished the last quarter of this season, or maybe like third, as a guy who, like potentially, like if he had played like this all year or even plays like this all next year, that's a 6 Man of the Year candidate. Like, without a doubt. Like, he has really come into that. But then we experienced the little comments he made in the media and stuff, like the working through of everything. And the team has gotten to this point where they should be so proud of how the season has finished, with points where it may have been like, you know, some of them had to front up to how they were feeling, how they were playing, not getting the minutes they wanted. And it's kind of character building for those guys, which I think is another really important part of how we're going to go into next season. But to answer your question, man, I always gush, man, but like I always come back to Markel, dude. Like I think I've said before when I've been on the podcast, man, like when he got drafted, there was especially like, I think people who have listened to me on this know that my kind of thing is that like I'm diehard Magic. I've got a soft spot for the Raptors, and then I'm watching Australian guys. And Ben was on that team, you know? So that for those first few years with Ben, like I was watching that Sixers team heaps. And when Markel came in, I was like, oh, I really want this kid to work out. You know, he seems like a sweetheart. And it was like, you know, the footage of JJ Redick screaming at the reporters to leave him alone, how shy he seemed. It actually was like, I remember thinking like, if this kid burns out of the league, like that's so heartbreaking, you know, like, and we watched him as he's come into Orlando. His personality is growing. Like now he's like one of the funny dudes. He's kind of like the dude who's like mucking around a little bit and having a laugh, and he's always smiling. And I guess like I'm just so happy that this team has given him like the space for like his mental, the space for his physical, made him feel comfortable, given him a home, and he has been able to like just use that mental foundation, that like, you know, emotional safety to kind of like develop into this guy who, when he comes out on the court, like he just, yeah, the shot isn't there. And I genuinely still believe that like that's a limiting factor. It might put us at a point where if we ever need to be a deep playoff team, that maybe he's the backup. But he actually, some games, man, looks like one of those guys where it's like, oh, this is slowed down for him. This dude's on a different level to other guys out there. Just that lack of pull-up threat changes it. But I watch him play sometimes and I'm like, this is like, you know, young CP3 type like play that he's got. Like his feel, his awkwardness, his herky-jerky kind of movements. It's really unorthodox, but it looks so pretty and so effortless that like every single game he plays that's good for me feels like just like another success story. Like at this point, everything's gravy for him. You know what I mean? Like everything's gravy now. Like at the end of the day, it's like he made it to where he wanted to make it. It didn't go to plan at first. At the end of the day, like how many other people can say they got drafted in the NBA? But everything now is just like, if this is his max right now, that's awesome. And he's going to go down as one of my favorite Magic players of all time. Because I love that kid, man. And like, I think he's a sweetheart. I love how he plays. You know, I can be realistic about the fit on the team if it ever comes to real proper winning time. But man, that dude for me is just that's like such a success story. And I actually like sometimes like I get emotional when I like talk about Markel Fultz, and I still never will forget. And like anyone who like is as diehard Magic as us, like I know like Malik and Pat and Jonathan and those guys will be listening to this and they'll remember the exact moment. But the game against Washington where he like broke his career high that time and was just fucking cooking. And like he got that breakaway throwdown dunk and like turned around and Evan got up in his face and like Markel just kind of like screamed to the sky. I remember thinking like, he's having a moment now where like it's all coming out of him. Like he's just, everything that had built up and was pent up in him just seemed to come out. And it was like it seemed quite cathartic. And I remember I've got a really good friend, my friend Alan, and he's like a Sixers fan, and he went through the whole thing with Markel. And I think we were texting, and he was like, man, like, I'm so hyped for this kid. Like, this is the best. And yeah, I could go on about Markel Fultz forever, man, but that's my big thing for the year.
Man, he's been fun. I mean, like, I have my ups and downs with Fultz. For the most part, I think they're really up. and the downs always come to like, is he ultimately the right fit for the core going forward?
Yeah.
And for the next couple of years, most likely, like,
he's
we'll answer that question.
Making it better.
Yeah. And it's interesting because his 3-point shot actually wasn't horrible. I don't know what the stats were. It was just like super low volume, but I think it was like around like 32, 33% this year, which like isn't 31. Horrible. 31, that's
31 on 1.4 attempts a game.
Yeah, it's pretty horrible, but actually, it's a lot better than where it used to be.
Sure.
And if he can, I'm interested to see like if he comes out next year, like for the Magic playing, like shooting like 3 to 4 attempts per game, like from 3, that would be like, and if he could bring that up to like 33, 34%, like that'd be pretty cool. Really, really impressive stuff. And again, I don't know if that's going to solve all of the question marks with fit, because like, ultimately, I feel like when you find your 2 guys, you got to surround them with shooters. And like, we got those 2 guys, and hopefully they continue to take steps in their own with shooting, so we can like not have to be so nitpicky about it. But and also like fixing some shooting in the depth charts as well will solve some things. But yeah, like I think for me, what I like most about Fultz is really these last like 25 games where it's like. My complaint for him this year really wasn't even about the shot, because I gave up on that a long time ago. It, in my opinion, was never going to come back, and that's fine. It was more so like the up and down on aggression of scoring. There'd be nights where you'd see him just charging and really going for it, and then there'd be nights where you'd see him take like 7 shots, and I'm just like, dude, what the fuck? And it seems like this last quarter of the season, he's really just said like, I'm going. And he's been aggressive. He's scoring hard. He's looking to score. I don't know his attempts per game, and that doesn't really matter, but it's just like, it's almost more like the mindset that I've seen like shift in him in this last quarter of the season, where he's having more takeover moments than he did when he was first coming back in those first like 20, 30, 40 games that he was on the court with us. And it's just been, I've really enjoyed that mental shift that he has seemed to take in, and like that growth of confidence, I think that's come with it. I've gotten a little less storyline driven of players off the court and whatnot. Yeah, I got a little emotional when during that moment too that you explained. As much as I could give 2 shits about Jonathan Isaac, I got a little emotional when I saw him take his first game, back this year, even though that storyline has since gone back down. But as much as I don't like him as a person, like I was really excited during that moment when he got back on the court. But like, I'm more so like, how are you helping the team? I don't, I have other emotions now with like my family that has definitely shifted how I view players and their storyline. So it's really more about the on-court productivity for me. And like that was it's also nice to hear him like his team, and he is a good person that you don't have to doing some jank ass shit off the court either. So
you're right. Like Markel has become our closer.
Dude,
like Markel has become our closer. It's insane.
Yes.
Like the confidence he's got on that mid-range shot is just like, he has become the guy to hit the shot. Like, unless it's a 3, but it's wild. Like, yeah, it is. You're right in that the aggression is there now. The confidence is there. It's really good. You're right about like, I don't love a lot of the things that Jonathan Isaac does and gets involved with off the court, but I guess that my own humanity meant that I know how hard he would have been working to do something he loves, and something he does to support his family. And those are values of mine that I think are important in regards to how people conduct themselves. So when he did step back on the court, I was just like, kudos, man. Like the work he would have put in. And I actually remember being really stoked for him, man. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff this year. I think it's awesome.
That's because I muted myself. You can hear me back.
I hear you now, dude.
There are some audio issues and some internet issues, but we should be back running right now. But yeah, man, I totally agree with you, man. Like Markel's been a great storyline. And seeing him just kind of like take that next step, be our closer on many nights has been a lot of fun. Obviously, I think another super fun success storyline for me this season has been Paulo. We went through so many years, man, of having first round draft picks, and not that they haven't like necessarily worked out, but not having the excitement around their rookie year. We drafted Bamba or J.I. We'll just go back to the first, player they drafted, J.I., and he getting hurt, halfway through the season, doesn't play, doesn't finish his rookie year. Bamba breaks his leg, playing behind an all-star. Just don't really get to see him have a complete season. They drafted, I think, Chuma Okeke after that, and he had they drafted a dude with a broken ACL, and we didn't get to even see him play a rookie season until the following year where they drafted him and Cole. And that was a weird year because of it was the first year after COVID and just all sorts of weird things. So it's last season with Suggs, and he got hurt, and Franz, who is a tank. And then this year with Paulo, it's man, not only did we get those picks correct, in regards to Franz and Paulo for sure. And I'm pretty happy with Suggs too. But we also got to see them play complete seasons, and Paulo, his first rookie season, no major injuries, a little tweaked ankle in the beginning. I think he missed 8 games or something like that. But now he's going to come back and he's going to win Rookie of the Year. There's been dialogue around the team about him, good, bad throughout the entire season. And I just think that's it's such a success to just have this team go from never being talked about to being talked about. And even ways that piss off Magic fans for random things that media say, talking about other rookies coming up and whatever. All publicity is good publicity when it comes to this Magic team, in my opinion. So he's been a really cool storyline for me to enjoy and say is obviously a success for this team.
Absolutely. But it feels so weird to know in the last 2 seasons we've had 3 draft picks, top 10, him, Franz, and Jalen. And Jalen's had the struggles and the injury, but 2 out of 3 for the Magic feels like we're batting really well. That's actually sick. And I know that Franz, I think the usage rate was quite high, obviously, for them at the start without Markel around and Cole missing a bunch of time. And I think that really did wear down on both of them for a fair bit. They did kind of look – there was a period where they looked just intensely exhausted. And I that'll be fine. I think we have a healthy offseason. I know Franz has got the World Cup for Germany, and he had Eurobasket last year, so he's going to be on a bit of a run of fairly constant basketball, even though he's got a few months off now. So I'm not one of those people who gets worried about that, because I think international basketball is of insanely high value to these guys. But, that's something to think about. And Paulo has said that he wants to eventually play for Italy. They have qualified. I don't know what his plans are for this World Cup. He might wait for an Olympics or something. But I would be happy if they went and did something like that, especially Paulo, man, to go look at different defenses, different offensive structures, and just continue to grow his game. You know what I mean? Because the international play is quite different. So I think I would actually like that if Paulo did it. But yeah, I'm so thankful they stayed healthy, and I'm really excited.
I agree with you, man. If they both went and played international ball this summer, that would be awesome. I'm all about. I mean, these guys are going to be playing anyways. If they're not, if it's not with a country, for international stuff, they're playing in the States, pickup ball, training camp, all sorts of not our training camp, but they're training with their trainers and stuff like that. They're playing with friends. Not every pickup game gets shown on Instagram. They're playing pickup all the time. So it's I'm totally fine if they want to go overseas.
And they're doing it with medical staffs around too. Once they go into their home country programs and stuff, they're in tournaments, so they've got their medical staff. They've got all stuff like that to manage their minutes through the tournament if they need and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see them both, like what they're going to do this summer in regards to that, because that would be like really cool for them. Because I think it goes to show just like how much Franz grew from his international play last year into this season, and help him take that next step with his efficiency and his finishing around the rim, and just like handling the ball more too, and decision making. Franz obviously took a huge step this year. And I just like, again, he's another amazing storyline for this team to be like super proud of. Both those guys making, rising stars for All-Star, which, was really nice to have too. Poor Jalen Suggs. Hurting him, getting hurt at the beginning of the year doesn't help, man.
Nice.
So, man, I think before we transition to like more off-season stuff, unless there's more like success storylines we want to talk about, I think we can naturally start shifting towards, I don't want to say disappointments, but more like areas of improvements, right? And I mean, I guess we can say disappointments because certain players were literally just disappointing, or certain storylines of like of how player situations played out were disappointing. But yeah, what's like a disappointing storyline or an area of improvement that like really stuck out to you this season?
I don't know if there's anything I can think of where I'm like, that's incredibly disappointing. I felt like with the ball stuff, I felt like a bit of a crazy person sometimes with some of the like ways that people were going with what they were saying about him. The defensive stuff for me was just an abomination at times, and like just to me it was like, okay, there's a unique unorthodox kind of body type and approach to the game offensively that has fun moments, but there are so many other things in basketball that this dude's going to need to be able to stop doing at a really low level for him to be able to play proper minutes. And so the ball thing, man, like it was a bit weird for me. If he's on the roster next year, like I'm fine with it, but I don't want him to be in a rotation unless he has really improved on those things. I guess what I might do is I might give you a few points and keep it quite quick. Sure. Cole, I really hope that Cole looks at this last quarter to a third of this season and he's like, you know what? I'm fucking gunning for that 6 Man of the Year award next year. He's like, I'm going for that. And like, he actually like he understands that he brings such a special and kind of required skill in the NBA for that kind of like gunner dude who can at times run an offense, handle the ball, hit a pull-up three. He's gotten a lot better with his passing. His defensive effort has never been an issue for me. It's just like his size and stuff that kind of, and maybe like IQ with it. But I hope that he kind of leans into the success that he's had and really understands that that's a lane where he could probably excel. The Isaac stuff, if he's healthy at the start of the next season, that's great. I will be excited to see how that goes, but I'm not getting my hopes up. And I'm guessing that actually I don't really necessarily want to touch on the roster because we'll probably talk about that with off-season and stuff. But yeah, those three players, man. Everyone else like kind of they're on the path I want. Like Jalen Suggs, future defensive. Like first, second team. Like he is, that skill is, I feel bad every time I hear someone be like, Jalen Suggs hasn't worked out on a podcast. And I'm like, bro, you are not fucking watching. Like one end of the court, this dude is elite at the moment. But the problem is it's only every third game that he can score efficiently, and I'm saying that kind of loosely. Like I don't know the exact rhythm of his streaks and stuff. But like, the other day I looked, he had 14 points, 16 minutes. I'm like, we're having one of those Jalen Suggs games where the next game he'll go like 2 from 9. Like the offense needs to get more consistent. I know as the season went on, the numbers have become really good on his 3-point shooting. So I hope that carries through. He's a little less lost when going into traffic. I've talked about this before with Paolo. I think Jalen's one of those guys who might have like got caught out of the fact that every level he played at coming into the NBA, he's just been stronger and more athletic than people. And he has struggled with his handle and navigating how defenses handle him driving or him coming off a pick and roll. So offense is a big thing I need from him, but the defense for Jalen is just like effort is there, the smarts are there. In a few years' time, dude, he's going to be maybe not as ever as good, because I think that Drew Holiday is one of the best perimeter defenders, or one of my favorite perimeter defenders I've ever watched with how he defends. But he's a Drew Holiday type defender for me.
I want to touch there too, because as far as disappointing areas of improvement, kind of just downer conversations, I didn't want to. I was going to bring up Jalen Suggs, but only on the offensive aspect, and just with his slow start to the year on that end, because he has picked it up towards the second half. Particularly shooting. 3-point percentage. He's gone from 21% to 32%, which is still not great, but definitely a lot better. I think his last 20, 30 games or so is even better than, I think that might even be closer to 35%. I'm sure Rayshard on Twitter can tell me exactly what it is, because he does all that stuff. But yeah, he's been just really fun and impressive, and I've really enjoyed his defensive aspect. But I think I was hoping his offense would take a little bit more of a leap, or at least be a little bit more consistent, like you were saying. And that's something I hope he works on this summer, and will translate into next year as well. I agree with you, Bol, but I think everyone knows I was out on Bol before he was even drafted. So I'm not too surprised. I guess I was fine with him getting in the rotation and trying the experiment. I guess I'm a little more annoyed that we just ran the experiment so long. When in my opinion, we should have stopped running that in January, and finding other solutions when it was clear that he's not affecting winning in a positive way, in my opinion. But again, don't want to get too stuck on that aspect. Just I'm not that guy that's going to praise him too much. If he's on the team next year, fine, no big deal.
Yeah.
I don't think I loved how they managed certain players opportunities or developments, and there's so much that goes into it, but RJ and Chuma, stuff like that. I think another
I didn't even think of RJ Hampton, man, but yeah, that one real. You know how I feel about that one. That one really frustrated me. I'm very disappointed in that. That's probably the one thing where I'm really fuck, we dropped the ball there. We really did. Totally.
On so many different levels. And granted, maybe he's never going to be an amazing player. And maybe he was always going to never make it with the Magic on his next contract. But they didn't do many favors for him, in the last, since last offseason to now, in my opinion.
So that suggests to me that there had to have been, and this kind of blows my mind. I'm sorry to cut you off. This blows my mind a little bit, because, again, I know every time I come on the podcast, I reference back to the fact that, I live in Australia. I follow the Australian League. So I've kind of was watching this kid in the NBL year, and the NBL loved the idea that him and LaMelo were doing that year. So the content, there was so many interviews with him, and it seems like a sweetheart of a kid with a great family. And I think there must have been some breakdown in him and Jamal Mosley's relationship. I think there has to have been something. Maybe RJ, has a little bit of blame in this, but I just don't think that we did right. We didn't. Yeah, I think there was some mishandling of that from our end, 100%.
I think there's mishandling there, but I also feel like we learned this season, when the front office is done with a player, they are done, because we saw RJ not get any minutes when we didn't even have point guards healthy. We saw Chuma not get any minutes when there were needs for him to play some gaps with some other injuries when he came back healthy. Not playing multiple games in a row, or only garbage time or something like that. And yeah, I don't know if that's Mosley. I don't know if that's front office influence. Maybe it's both, but it's just weird. And it does raise some eyebrows for me. Yeah, I think I agree. I agree with a lot of what you said there, and just feel like it's just I think we've learned how they realize, when you're done with a player, they're just done, and you can just kind of see it, which kind of sucks. I think my last thing with disappointment, granted, there's so many storylines we could nitpick throughout the entire season, but I think another one is just Mosley's rotations and like when he started to tighten down the buckle. For me, I feel like I was wanting him to go to a 9-man rotation and stop experimenting like with around 20, 25 games left when the Magic actually had a real opportunity to make the play-in. And he didn't do that. He waited till game 10 left to go to a 9 when, man, we were like, okay, this team needs to lose this many games and this team needs to lose and we need to win this many games. And this, like, there was so much math and probability of us to actually make it at that point in time when he's like, cool, we're going to win. Let's go to a 9-man rotation and like go on a little winning streak. When it's like, dog, you could have done that 15 games ago when we weren't having to count so much. Like, we didn't have to rely on so much luck from the other team. Like, we could have just rung a couple more extra wins in there. But no, like, we still had to do these like weird ass rotations and weird experimenting, which I can understand the front office wanting more data points, but like, then don't be so disappointed that we didn't make the plan when you didn't crank down on like, everyone fucking knows a 9-man rotation is like tight and going to win things. And even like as playoffs get to, we're going to see 8-man rotations. And so it's like, fucking hammer down if winning is about, if you're about winning, like be about it with your rotations too. And so like, I don't know, when I didn't see that happen and then I saw him like crank down at that point, I'm all like, dude, it's too late at this point. We might as well be playing for the lottery odds, you know, to an extent. And so, that's like my last disappointment there. But I think there's so many more positives that we got out of this season than negatives. You know, we know who works well next to each other. We, in some capacities, we definitely know what's missing. We know shooting is missing. Even Goga, like, has shown us a lot of what we need. And like, not even just like, I think we knew it as fans, like, oh, we need rim protection. We need size. We need rebounding. You know, someone who can play a little bit more in the paint physically. And oh shit, Goga, who is like not great. He's kind of like finding this little rhythm here, and maybe he will be something. Maybe he can be like a good backup center in the next couple of seasons. And I'm glad we signed him, but like he definitely showed us like what we've missed as a team and has sort of like filled that hole a little bit. So that I think like finding that information has been like very successful for this team as well.
It's strange because he's kind of the inverse in some ways of Mo Wagner, because like you run either of them at your backup 5 and you kind of like you give up a few things with one and then you give up a few things with the other. Like I think Mo Wagner is probably a bit more gifted offensively and could probably score in a few different ways more. Like Mo Wagner can, like, if he sees the right matchup, he's got that Vooch kind of like spin and catch a guy late and drive from the elbow, kind of like he's got very, very like loose kind of like ball on the floor type skills, and he's a bit more an offensive minded guy, where Goga like brick wall screens, you know, roll, you know, rim protection. It's kind of like if you were able to combine the two of them, it'd be sick, but they kind of give up different things that the other doesn't. So it's kind of been interesting when I've seen Mo's go like certain ways in certain games. But yeah, Goga's been cool, man. Like, you know, it's like one of those moves that was like, it didn't matter like that we did it. Yeah. It's just like, well, this dude's in the scrap heap. Let's see how he goes. And I like Mo Wagner a lot, though. I think he does bring, he brings like energy. He brings a real like prick motherfucker type vibe, which I like. I think every team kind of needs that dude in a sense. And he does bring that. I think Goga has that in him. I don't know how much other people listening will follow international stuff, but at Eurobasket, there was an incident between his team, Georgia, and I want to say Turkey or Czech Republic or someone, with a fight in the tunnel after a game. And Goga Batadze apparently being at the like forefront of that and seeking out players. So I think he's got it in him too, but Mo Wagner's like,
we've seen him get into some scuffles even in the Magic uniform in the last couple of months. Like,
yeah, he's
like
got it.
nothing major, but you can tell he's a little bit more edgy than some of the rest of the roster. You know, like he's definitely like talk a little shit and like back it up a little bit physically, and you know, be the first off the bench to go like get a tech. You know.
Yeah, if they're both on the roster next year, like I'm fine with that. Like that for me, it would probably be the last year. Like I know the Mo Wagner stuff a little bit had to do with Franz, like, you know, keep him comfortable in the city, get his brother around, help him, you know, get used to the place. But, you know, that can obviously only go on so long if we need to shore up the backup big role a bit more. Like you can't all be Thanasis and Tentaclepo, you know, where like you stay as long as your brother says because your brother is calling the shots properly, you know, like in a sense. I'm not trying to talk down on the Bucks franchise at all, or Giannis. He's my favorite player in the NBA. But that's a different situation, you know, like the Magic may eventually need to be like, all right, Morris has got to go. We've got to make this work a bit of a different way. But yeah, no, that backup big spot, you know, interested to see how that goes next season for sure.
Yeah. And I guess this is an organic time to like start transitioning to like kind of roster questions going into the offseason, like what we need to shore up on. And I agree, backup center is one of them. I think I'm okay if our three centers are Wendell Carter, Goga, and if they resign Mo Wagner. I don't love it. It would not excite me. But in some ways I'm leaning more towards like keep Goga over Moritz Wagner, but it'd be fine if they didn't. I just like, man, like I'm so tired of like our backup center situation being shitty and like, you know, because Mo is clearly a third string center, like, or like special situations kind of guy, spark plug when something is not working, but he kind of needs to play next to someone bigger and beefier, in my opinion, sort of like Goga.
Well, they've been playing him together a little bit. He's been doing some Goga at the 5, Moritz at the 4.
And I don't hate that. I don't hate it at all. I just don't know if that's what, like, if we're about that winning life next year, which I want to be, I don't know if that's winning, you know, much. Maybe Goga has another level in him to where he can take a step to be a really good backup center. I don't know. I don't know if I've watched enough to be able to like make that thought fully formed on him yet. Same. He's young enough. He's only been in the league a couple of years. I think there is potential opportunity for him to take another leap in his development and be a good backup. But right now it still feels like he's kind of a third. So I'd like to see, but dude, I don't want to go in the season with four centers, you know, I don't want to go sign, like that just feels like a waste unless the fourth center's on a 2-way. What other, unless you have more to touch on the center rotation, what other roster holes do you feel like are like really like that are focusing for you?
For me, it is probably like the wing spot. Like I think that obviously I think we're still rolling with Markel. He's probably going to be the starting point guard next season. Yeah. Gary Harris is on contract. Look, by no means is anything Gary Harris has done been amazing, nor has it been really poor. I would love to probably see him back at the 2. I think we've got a really effective starting 5. I don't see. I would like to bank on growth and him just continue to be someone who can be utilized as that like 2-spot shooter and defender. But it's kind of behind Franz and Paolo for me. Like that's kind of the if we rolled in next season and it's like the bigs that we talked about, the guards, Gary, Jalen, Cole, Markel, it's kind of that Franz and Paolo like bigger ball handler or spot up shooter, kind of the space that your Terrence existed in or Trumer exists in or Caleb
even
Houston.
J.I.
Caleb Houston is one where like if it's like if he's in the rotation starting next year, I'm like cool, let's go, because I really like that kid. I think he's going to be good. I think we actually very genuinely have picked up a good value 32 32nd pick. So It is that spot. I think next year you want to be running a 9-10 man rotation. You want to be staggering Paolo and Franz on the court at all times for the sake of our offense and their development. But it's just about getting like a gun shooter, someone who can maybe, attack a closeout. If they get 2 feet in the paint, can pass it out, make a good decision. Like nothing out of this world. It's just like continuing to complement Franz and Paolo. But it's tricky because it's kind of like there's so many paths to that. Like, what if it's Caleb Houston? What if we give him a year next year and he has like great growth and he averages like, I don't know, 11 points and 4 boards, and that's on 37% shooting. Like, okay, cool. We might have 2 whatever top whatever picks that could be turned into something if we decide to not go ahead with taking those picks. It's just really about shoring up that spot because there's so many questions around the guys sitting there. Like, can Chuma stay healthy? Can Chuma, I don't know, show something? Yeah, like, it's been a bit of a fizzer with him at times. He has shown some stuff, but sometimes I think he's shown stuff in situations where sometimes people forget that an NBA team is playing a game and somebody needs to score the points. Like Chuma scored points at end of season when other guys have been out. Like somebody's got to score the points in every game. Is Chuma a guy who contributes to winning basketball? Yes, I know he is because he's got a lot of like cool little skills that he delivers, but I'm yet to just see him be somewhere where I'm like, I'm comfortable with him being in my rotation when it really comes down to it. J.I. Health, Caleb Youth. So there's questions around that spot behind our main 2 guys. So for me, that's a big one. To jump back, like if they find something better than Gary, if they can move his contract or something like that, a guy who maybe just is going to be more consistent as a catch and shoot guy, because Gary did have a bit of an up and down year. That'd be good, but it's just really like tightening screws for me right now. Unless we somehow get the second pick and the first pick, and we get Scoot or someone, and it's like, all right, cool. Well, Scoot's going to start at the 2 next to Markel, until he maybe moves to the 1 and we bring someone in at the 2. Like, there's so many paths to like making this roster better, and that's a blessing that we have that right now, man.
Yeah,
I think that's such a testament to like how successful I think this season actually has been. So we've got an okay like contract sheet, man. Like, obviously Terrence's money is cleared up. We've got a few guys that I reckon will probably move around the edges. Like Bowl still could be moved. Chuma could be moved. There's a few different ways we go with this, dude. And I just think that it doesn't need to be any overhaul right now. It's just like tighten up the shooting, get backup rim protection, and kind of bank on the year that Wendell, Cole, Markel, Franz, and Paolo have all had, and just run the ball out and trust your development, trust your coaching staff, and let's see if we can have a full healthy season. Maybe be like a 45-win team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, I agree. I agree with a lot of that because, like, obviously we had that like 5-20 start, which was awful. If we just had like, better health there, like this team would be in a different situation today. And it'd be nice to like just go through the season next year with some good health and just see where that takes us. But also like, yeah, let's improve the center. I do agree we need to figure out some wing stuff there. I like Chuma. I don't know if the Magic have done everything to help him. He's also injured a lot. And he's also disappointed in some ways outside of that. But I don't actually, as much as I feel like there's some questions there and I don't necessarily always agree with how he was handled, I don't know if I want him on the team next year. Like it's fine if he's there.
Like, good things. He does a lot of good like little things in game.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes he's almost invisible. It's a bit strange. He's a bit of a weird one.
And it's not so much like I don't want him on the team because I don't like him. It's more so like we could maybe be doing something a little bit better with that roster spot, right? But there's also a lot of roster spots there. Like I would much rather keep Chuma over Bull. I'd much rather keep Chuma over Michael Carter-Williams. No offense, or Admiral Schofield. Those are all players I hope are not on this team next year to just open up roster spots. I do think all right, man, Jonathan Isaac is someone we cannot rely on. I'm not going to cry if he's on the roster next year because you have up until I think January 1st or 10th to waive him with only owing him $7 million. So it's a very favorable contract for the Magic right now. And it's his last year on contract. So it's it's not the end of the world if he's on the team. But again, you can't rely on him. And you kind of need that 2-3 wing to be shored up on the back end a little bit there. Maybe that's someone we draft. Maybe we have $23 million in space. We use that to sign a guys. I think there could be something there with Caleb, particularly as he gets a little bit older, a little bit stronger, more confident.
He's got to beef up a bit.
He's got to beef up a bit, but dude, his shot is so pure and so fast. I love it.
Yeah. I love having a Toronto kid on the roster too. I'm soft spot for Toronto. I love having a Toronto kid on the team.
Dude, he's good, man. I'm excited to see him just continue. I want good things for him. I think we have him on a 3-year contract too, which is cool.
Can I read you some free agents for next year at the forward
absolutely.
position?
Let's talk some free agents as we wrap this up.
All right, so here's some guys. Okay, you've got Yuta Watanabe, who's had an unreal season shooting the ball. Great defensively as well. He's someone I would like to try and look at. I don't think he's the type of dude who would think that his role in the NBA is as a starter. And I think he could be a backup wing. Secondary playmaking, IQ, locker room. Joe Ingles is another one. Everywhere he goes, people love him. Everywhere he goes, he can put with anybody.
Man, you would never stop. Your text thread with me would be nonstop. Joe Ingles was on this team. Bro.
I'm not even going to go into that side of it. I'm going to treat him like a normal player who's not born in the same country
Bullshit.
I'm from. I'm just going to say, hey, I'm looking at this from Joe Ingles' hoop ability. I very genuinely
he's a good fit. I agree. And I would love our text message conversations if he was on this team too.
Yeah, for sure. Georges Niang is another one. Juan Toscano Anderson. I can't really remember his shooting splits. There's a few guys, man, who are out there all unrestricted. I think the new CBA kicks in from next season. So that would mean that because I think Joe Ingles, for example, just signed a 1-year contract. So the Bucks wouldn't, because they're a tax-paying team, I think, or into that second apron, they wouldn't be able to offer him the full mid-level. They can only offer the shorter one, I think.
I think that's going to be a slowly implemented rule that probably won't be in effect for another 2 seasons. I think they said that is they're aiming for 2025 for that one. So there's still a little bit of give there.
Okay.
I like that, dude. I like that. I would love Joe on this team. He would be an awesome vet. Good shooter. I've liked him since his time with the Jazz. And his story, and I've heard him on a bunch of podcasts, and he's just a kick-ass dude, and
he's
a great
full,
veteran for
locker room. Dudes love him. Yeah, dudes love him.
Absolutely. He'd be an awesime get for this team.
Yeah, Yuta Watanabe is a big one for me too. I think Yuta Watanabe is someone we should look at.
I don't know much about him. I'm intrigued by what you're saying though. I'm not going to pretend and say that I've watched a lot of his game and know his style of play. But I am of the belief that dude, we're not going to get the tier A players. We're not going to get Fred VanVleet this summer. We're just we're not going to get, we're probably not going to be in the mix to make a big trade for someone. Maybe we will, but I still don't think so. But I do think
Sorry,
I think it's someone else on that list. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yuta Watanabe shot 34% last season on 2.1 attempts. He has jumped to 45% on 2.3 attempts in 57 games this year. Nice. He's just perfect backup wing. As long as he's stroking it, he's got defensive effort, can space the floor, switchable. You know what I mean? He can probably defend 2 through 4. He's a player that I would look at 100% if we're the Magic front office.
What do you feel about Mr. I feel like this is one person we would actually have to spend a little bit of money on, but I'd probably be okay with it because of like the age and like just what he's capable of. How do you feel about Mr. Gary Trent Jr.? I feel like that's like probably the upper tier of free agent that we might be able to actually attract.
Money and his perception of his role. Like, I think Gary Trent Jr. comes into an organization like Orlando and, you know, an organization I love, but this is a guy who, I guess he wasn't there when they won the championship, but Toronto are a highly respected, well-run organization. I think he would think to be signing with Orlando, and I don't think it'd get there because they'd have the conversation. I'd think he'd think he's the man. Like, he's a bit of a chucker. Like, I saw a lot of people talk about Gary Trent Jr. this year, and I was like, I don't know if that's the situation that makes Franz and Paolo better. Whereas, and like, look, it probably doesn't go that way, but we've talked about it. But I'm pro Fred VanVleet on this roster, depending on, like, as long as it wasn't exorbitant money. Like, it obviously would be more than anyone else on the roster is getting paid, but I think he is coming into a period of his career where he would understand this is about making these young, hyper-talented guys better. And it would allow him to back off a little bit and maybe like expand his career a little bit because he would become kind of the third guy, maybe the Kyle Lowry to Pascal and Kawhi in a sense. Like, if you want to look at it from a similar viewpoint of a situation he's been in and around. Whereas I think Gary Trent Jr., I just don't think that at his age, point of his career, it is what it is. But fuck, who knows, man? Like, you know, if we got him and it was just like, all right, this is a three-headed monster, you know, like, you guys have to go with this equal amount of shots, equal responsibility. Like, you know, on his night, you know, he can get defenses thinking. So it could be all right, but that one's a bit of a weird one for me. I don't know what the fit.
I hear that. I think the reason why I bring him up is just because, like, volume from three is where, like, I'd like to see improvement. Like, it's nice when a guy can shoot, you know, 37% on 2 shots a game. It's a lot nicer when they can hit 36 on 8 shots a game, right? And granted, like, depending on where they're sitting into the rotation, like, that's 8 attempts is like starter minutes. You know, so maybe off the bench, we're looking for someone to be shooting at least like 5 per game, and maybe that's Caleb Houston. I hear you. I do have some of those worries too about his offensive fit, and I've heard some rumblings about his like personality too that could be a little bit. But I'm also like, man, this culture is really strong. We could probably be a team that could take someone who's not like the nicest person in the world and like make it work, you know? Like, I don't think there's too many people that are coming in and like fucking shit up, to be honest. They'd have to be like really big fucking pricks.
Good point.
For that to happen. I don't hate the Fred VanVleet idea. I like the fit. The money would have to be right. Years on contract would have to be right. I don't love the idea of giving him a 4-year contract because I do really feel like if he doesn't age well, those last year or two could be not great. You know, as we've seen with like Kyle Lowry right now in Miami the last 2 seasons.
The thing with those Raptors guys too that you like, I like, they've been run into the fucking ground, the way that like their defensive scheme has been played, the minutes, and that's why a big part of me thinks about like Fred next to Markel, playing at the 2. Everyone talks about Fred as a point guard, but like his best basketball has been played off ball. His most efficient basketball has been played off ball. Like, they won a championship where he played on the court with Kyle Lowry. So it wouldn't take the ball out of Markel's hands. And I think it would, like, you run him out there with guys like Jalen and stuff. Like, he doesn't have to defend the best guard anymore. He can give the ball up a bit more. Like, I think we would be able to just like slow down the decline a touch. But you're right. Like, if it was 4 years and we're stuck paying him $30 million a year in that last year, right around the time where we have to start paying other guys, then it gets tricky. So
yeah,
if we were to get him on like 3 years, 100, and it declines,
that'd be sick.
You know?
I'd love that.
And it's like that last year we're paying him like 26-ish. It's like, cool, but you know, he's going to go get paid for him and his family, and that's cool. Like, I really like Fred being someone. He's
going to get his money, and I think it's ultimately going to be from a West Coast team or potentially even just staying in Toronto. it's nice that we've been in rumors with one of the better free agents, but I just don't see it happening personally.
Yeah.
But in theory, it's a fun process, and I do agree there is some fit stuff there that makes a lot of sense, and he's a good leader too, from what we all hear, and family man.
Yeah.
So
sometimes it's hard to tell if those rumors are just his agent
leverage. Yeah,
leverage.
They absolutely are.
We're
not leaking those.
No, Orlando cops are fucking. We always get used to that, man. Like we were fucking Isaiah Hartenstein. We were the Joe Ingles one that few years ago. Well, Ingles, I think Ingles was like a lot closer actually, but the Ingles stuff, Fred VanVleet, like it always fucking happens to us, man.
Dude, always. Dude, all I know, man, it's gonna be an exciting summer. The Magic have 2 picks that are likely going to be like top 10, top 12 picks. One around 10 or 12, one around 6 or 7. If they don't waive Gary Harris and make some other crazy moves, they're looking at like $23 million in cap space. They could clear up a bunch more. They could get closer to 30, 35, depending on player options they pick up or decline and stuff like that. Team options on players and whatnot. They could get real crazy and free up a ton of money if they like waived Gary and bought out Jonathan Isaac. I don't think we're those kind of players yet. I think we're going to be floating with around $23 million. We're going to see solid Gary Harris coming back on this team next year. But it's fun, man. The Magic, like, they'd have to fuck up a lot of things to like regress next year or to like screw up their roster. I mean, they can fuck things up by paying the wrong people this summer. And that is a little scary, but they've done well drafting in the last couple of years, which is nice. So it gives me faith there. They're good negotiators on contracts. I don't really get too scared about that. But like signing Dillon Brooks to like a huge contract could fuck things up.
Man.
And I like Dillon Brooks. I'm a Dillon Brooks guy. And I know
livid, dude.
But as even someone who kind of likes Dillon Brooks and sort of likes the idea, this is an off-camera conversation. I'll tell you how he's a good fit for this Magic roster in a little bit.
You know me, like I'm pro Australian players, and from my time living in Toronto, I'm pro Toronto players. He's a Toronto boy. He's got an attitude that if I watch him do that on the Canadian national team, I'm like, yeah, but just his attitude doesn't match his output. And sometimes I have these times where I'm like, who do you think you are, dude? Like, do you think you're Paul George, man? Because you're fucking not, dude.
Sometimes I also think, though, like off court, like, okay, his on court, we can get into 30 seconds pitch on Brooks, and then we're wrapping this beast up.
We're going to do the tankathon spin.
Oh, and the tankathon spin, you're right. Brooks on court fit, he's a chucker, amazing defender. He would with him and Suggs taking another leap, we'd probably be like a top 10 defense. That'd be awesome. But with his offense, he's just not a good fit. But man, sometimes this team is a little soft, and I know people hate that word, but we can be a little soft. So it's like I've been really appreciative of some of the attitude and toughness that we've seen a little glimpse of. He would bring that to the next fucking level. Man, and maybe his would be dumbed down just a hair without jaw next to him, but like
man, I kind of have to disagree with you. Like, I think the fight earlier this year, I think Mo Wagner, I think Franz talks his shit. I think
Bamba started that fight, and he's off this team, bro. He's not on this team anymore.
I think that we actually are a bit more of a chest out there. Fuck you team. My thing with someone like Dillon Brooks is, and I love Cole Anthony, but sometimes with Cole, I'm like, I think he needs the perfect environment because he always seems to be just on the very precipice of just maybe acting out a little because he's so funny and he's the kind of clown in the team in a sense. So with me, it's like bringing in Dillon Brooks. I'm like, Cole might start trying to be a little bit of a fuckhead or something. I don't know. It just gets a bit iffy when we had someone like Dillon Brooks. But yeah, I feel you.
Yeah. We're not signing him, and I'm fine with it. And Magic fans are gonna think I'm like, oh, we need to go spend $23 million on Dillon Brooks.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's tankathon.
All right.
We're doing the spin. Sharing the screen so you can all see. I'm only clicking it once. Let's go. Did it do the thing? It didn't. All right, here we go. Hey, this is not bad. This is not bad. We lose the Chicago pick, but we get to pick Victor Wembanyama. So
1 and 2.
1 and 2. Orlando Magic jumps 6 spots. We get to pick Vic. Chicago Bulls, we do not get their pick. They land number 2. Houston Rockets stay at 3. Indiana jumps up to 4. Detroit drops down to 5. San Antonio drops down to 6. Charlotte drops down to 7. Oh my God. Portland drops down to 8. Washington and Utah round out 9 and 10. And Dallas would also lose their pick, going to 11 with, going to New York. So that's how the lottery.
20-25 pick for Chicago, though. That's still
top 5 protected that year, I believe. So
this is for another episode. This is for a post-lottery episode or a post-draft episode. When Magic fans talk about us really lucking out this year and getting number 1, I never hear any Magic fans talk about what they would then do with the roster if we've got Victor Wembanyama on our roster, because we've got a 4 and a 5. And they're both really good. I know that immediately people are going to be like, yo, but Vic's better than Wendell. Yes, I've got you. Like, well, the potential is there. Vic needs to build his frame. He's had injury issues. He still, for me, is a bit of a weird, like, how do you actually have an offense around this guy? Like, do you just run him out like a KD who can do things closer to the basket because of his height? Like, I still think he's just such a unicorn that it's like, I think teams are going to have to be like, what the fuck do we build our entire offense around this guy? So, again, it's for something that if it happens, but if we do get Vic, you got to get me on with Jonathan or Pat or Malik or someone. We've got to talk about what the fuck you then do. Yeah.
Absolutely. I do want to shout out Luke from Orlando Magic Daily. He just came out with an article, I think this morning or yesterday, about if the Magic land Vic, what do they do in the roster around it. So shout out to that.
I'm gonna read that. I'm gonna read it.
It's a good article because there's a lot of it brings up a lot of roster questions, about it. So it was very intriguing. And Orlando Magic Daily puts out good content in their written form and their podcast as well. So shout them out.
Are you following the Ringer NBA Draft Show, the one with J. Cole Mann and?
I haven't been listening to that as much as I'd like to. Just simply because work's been slammed and my podcast listenings have gone down as my work's gone up recently. But yeah, I do enjoy that show when I get to tune in. I've listened to a handful of episodes.
They just did an episode that I haven't listened to yet, but they did an episode where they talk about Victor Wembanyama's Victor Wembanyama. What? Yama? Victor? Oh man, you've got me mixed up. I knew it.
Wemby.
Wemby. About his weaknesses. So I'm interested to listen to what they say about the stuff that probably needs to be worked on outside of the physicality and stuff like that. But yeah, the thing with him is that the highlights look fucking insane. It'll be cool. But yeah, first and losing the Chicago pick would be fine by me, man.
I'm fine with that. You land Wemby, you can lose the Chicago pick and
get it next year.
Yeah. No big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude, it's funny that you called me out on saying his name weird because I'm the king of mispronunciation. There's 1 in every 10 episodes or 5 episodes, someone's like, you said Moritz Wagner's name wrong. I'm like, yeah, no shit. Of course I did. I do it all the time. My bad.
Dude, bad. Off podcast, we talk about, I've talked to you about this all the time, but I understand now it's par for the course for American basketball fans to get anything that's not a simple US name wrong, all the time. Doesn't bother me. You just got me caught up. I was like, fuck, am I saying it right now? But yeah, no, that's fine. And that would be great. Yeah.
Well, Magic fans, thanks for tuning in. Luke, I really appreciate you jumping on. Oh yeah. What do you got? You're holding up the finger.
I have one more thing.
Yes, sir.
To do with this season, I think it's a good thing for us to end on. I just because I haven't really been on a podcast or had any opportunity like this since it happened. But I really just think that for you and I and any Magic fan listening to this, I really want to just we should really acknowledge Terrence Ross. I think that he was with us for a bunch of times. Those 2 years in the playoffs, which were a good little claw into like some sort of relevancy for a moment. He was a big part of that, big part of our culture, a big part of helping these young guys come in, and now they're really leading the culture. And I think that you could tell they all really loved and respected him, and he had a lot of love and respect from the previous core, like, Vooch and Evan and AG. And, from the moment he came into the Magic, man, he did what he needed to. I remember that first post-trade deadline run where, like, he was really, like, showing out on the defensive end for a while. I guess he didn't have to do as much offensively for a little bit. We had a really good net rating for ages, I remember, with that five-man lineup, and a few guys falling into position a bit easier. But, yeah, he just brought so many exciting moments to the Magic uniform over the years, through some periods that weren't great. Always seemed really cool with, like, how nice and accommodating he was for, like, the smaller Magic media and the independent Magic guys, like, coming on this show, shouting out the six-man show guys. Like, he just seemed cool and seemed to really get around the fact that he was around an organization that was a little, I guess, smaller than maybe playing for another team that had more eyes on it. And I think that's a really good testament to who he kind of was. And, like, he brought me some real enjoyment watching the team. Like, the game winner, like, where he turned around and screamed and, like, punches his chest, like, that's, like, one of my favorite Magic moments. I just remember being so hyped. And I just think that, like, yeah, we as Magic fans made a point to let him know, but I just think he's a dude who's, like, going to be that guy who in 10 years' time can come back and sit courtside at a game, and he should, always get his flowers every time he revisits the building. And I just want to shout that dude out.
Dude, for real. Like, I know he was mostly on, like, teams that didn't win, but, like, that's fine. This team went, like, the teams were up and down. There were so many different things going on while he was here. From that first season, like, when he was a starter, but then, had that, like, conversation that came public about, yeah, if it's better for the team, I'll gladly come off the bench, like, almost volunteering
he was
to
that
do
dude.
that.
He was that dude 100%.
There was a little bit of, like, people will say and want to bring up, well, he requested a trade. I don't really think, like, all trade requests are created equal. I think it was more like, hey, I'm open to a new opportunity if it makes sense, but if not, I'm cool here too, and he was like that. Like, he's been solid the whole time, maybe a couple checked out moments here and there on the court, but for the most part, like, he really did embrace his role and embrace being, the old guy on the team. And honestly, he was the best dunker this team's had in ages. Even this past year, with all these kids that are, like, 25 and under, he was the better dunker out of all of them.
Dude, some of the fucking baseline reverse up and unders, man.
Insane,
like,
bro.
They were just fucking sick. Yeah, like, great point.
Go ahead, sorry.
Just great point. Not all trade requests are made equal. Like, I think it was perfectly fair, the approach he took. But yeah, just exciting basketball, man. And, like, I think we should just be thankful that the smaller teams will have that. They'll have that guy who's around during a run where, maybe it's not perfect. And yes, we made the playoffs a couple of times and we had some good wins in them, but other fans of other franchises won't remember that for us. We know what the 5 or so seasons that he was with us were. And we know that that's a guy who brought a lot of value to what the team was at least trying to do. They might not have succeeded in all of their objectives, but he is a guy that I think Magic fans should just be able to, like, show respect to forever. And I think it was dope.
7 seasons with us, man. Crazy. 7 seasons. Yep. So, all right, Magic fans, Terrence Ross, here's your flowers. Luke Smith, appreciate you, bro.
Thank you.
Tell the Magic fans where they can find you if they're interested.
I've got a Twitter, Smithy4701. All I do is just lurk. I'll occasionally tweet. I think I looked, and my last tweet was at the trade deadline, where I made a joke about how 5 second rounders is now the new protected second rounder or whatever. And I said it's going to make people using the trade machine worse, because now people are going to make totally unbalanced trades and then throw in 5 second round picks and be like, yo, but it's 5 second round picks. Like, it's crazy. But yeah, I've got a Twitter, Smithy4701. I go for the Magic. I follow rugby league in Australia. I'll occasionally tweet and talk about the Australian basketball. Got a World Cup coming up later in the year, so I'll be following my Australian team, who I love as much as I love the Magic. So that'll be a big time for me. So I'm sure I'll have some nights where I'm melting down over a close game against fucking France or Germany, or if we have to play one of the Magic guys, like if we have to play France or something, dude, I'm going to be losing my mind. But yeah.
Appreciate it. Everyone else, you know where to find me, Steven0610 or at the Close Up Magic. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Peace.